Everard left the area over there where her friend was. Obviously she'd gone out during the lockdown to visit a friend, which of course is forbidden under the rules, and she had come walking through the park here, and I'm going to walk the pathway that she walked through and have a little talk about the way in which this story has now been presented. I'm concerned because, well, multiple reasons. This area here actually, at night time, I actually lived around here for several months, a couple of years ago. And this area around here is a wooded area. It's always been scary. Whenever I walk through the park around here, it's a little bit scary. It is also a sort of sex place for gays and bisexuals to gather, and there's always a few people sort of hanging around there. And my suspicion is that perhaps this police officer was hanging around here and looking around. The peculiar thing about his sexual exposure a few days before, it's about power relations, isn't it? A policeman, it appears he's the person who's responsible, murdering a young woman. It's about power, and this power, this psychotic power, is really a concentration of the power that's been exercised by the police over a year now during the lockdown. And it's this ability to abuse people, to push people around, to tell them what to do all the time, to enforce petty regulations. And several newspapers have mentioned the possibility that the police officer concerned might have pulled the woman over on the basis that she was breaking lockdown. Now, there are many aspects to this. The police have been arbitrarily using their powers to challenge people, question them, ask them what they're doing. And of course, to do that in a completely arbitrary fashion, choose exactly who they want to or don't want to approach. And of course, they're all breaking the rules themselves. And so it allows them to believe that they have powers, sort of special powers that they can exercise. And the ultimate representation of that is ahead of us. We're walking towards the bandstand. Now, at this bandstand, there's supposed to be a demonstration, and the police have said, even though thousands and thousands of women and men have declared that they're prepared to come and protest, even in, what I believe is stupid. Wearing masks and track and trace to come to an open air demonstration. It's well known that there have been no recorded cases in Britain from any demonstrations or any open air events, and the summer events in Bournemouth and so on also didn't lead to any increase in cases. But the police are now saying that you can't gather in this park to protest against a murder by a policeman. You couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. And they're emptying out of the city, shutting everyone at home, locking them away. It not only creates violence, they're talking a lot about men's violence against women now. It not only creates violence between men and women in the households, but it also has created a psychosis within society, because so many people have been isolated and segregated for so long, they no longer really know what normal human interaction is. And then there's, shops and restaurants and bars have all closed. And so when you walk around town, it's like a ghost town. And it's been like this for months now. And this has been the very worst of the lockdowns. So, when Jack the Ripper, if you go on a Jack the Ripper tour, you'll see that the best tours of Jack the Ripper always include a social history element. What are the conditions which give rise to even the most bizarre types of behaviour by individuals? What conditions gave rise in Nazi Germany to the Nazis being able to, for brutality to take over in society, and for people to be even accepting of such brutality, tolerating such brutality. And it's these things that strike me are the issues we need to address here. We have an insane lockdown at the moment, dividing the population from each other. Millions of people in penury, and about whose conditions are even about to be made even worse, whilst plunderers and thieves have stolen billions and billions in the name of tracking and tracing a disease which they never actually tracked and traced at all. Billions spent on PPE that was useless. Policing designed to control the people and limit their questioning. Social media channels controlled in the name of healthcare by fact checkers whose qualifications for fact checking are almost certainly zero. And then we're not supposed to protest when a policeman murders a young woman. We're not supposed to protest. We can be arrested for protesting about a policeman murdering a young woman. That's where we're at. Now, this is the bandstand where, the young lady walked past here, and then down the road here. So I'll follow that road down just so you can follow the route that she followed. Obviously, it was night time when she came down here. And this is where there is supposed to be some sort of vigil. Now, if people are standing at a distance from each other, I mean, yes, if you want to show that the rules, that you're not in any way conflicting with government regulations and rules, okay, go ahead and do a socially distanced event, but there's nonsense. But okay, just to prove the point, you could do that. At Speaker's Corner, we've also said to the police, okay, what about if we stand at 3 meters apart, 1 extra meter than the regulations say? But they always say no, and they always threaten to arrest us. Now, down over here, there's a lake. It's a fishing lake. And then there's a little cafe. And then the pathway towards Pointers Road. Now, Pointers Road is a circular road. It's always been a little bit eerie, I must say that. It is true that this sort of wide open spaces, before you get anywhere near any buildings, would allow someone to grab someone from the street in theory, but it's quite a busy street as well at normal times. And certainly before you get to Pointers Road, you would pass, there's a number of very busy bars. There used to be very busy bars on the corner over there. So I would suspect that this guy was hanging out around here, just my guess, hanging out around here, and then picked on this woman and followed her down the road there, whether by a vehicle or probably with a vehicle, and grabbed her off the street. Almost certainly, a young woman like that's not going to stop for anyone on the street. So almost certainly he pulled out his police card and said to her, "What are you doing out? Are you in breach of coronavirus laws?" And then probably got her to get into the car on the basis that he was either going to take her home to solve her problem or to charge her or something like that with a breach of corona. Probably the former, to try and persuade her to get into the car. A couple of police walking around in front here. Now there is actually, in this corner over here, there is an area that is designated as a speaker's corner. It's the area that covers pretty much from over here and down to the corner over there, and including, I believe, the piece of grass that goes over towards Clapham Common Station. I understand it should walk down here. Down towards Poinders Lane. Now Poinders Road has also had a building, like there's a redesign of the buildings of council flats around the area there, and a consequence of that is that all the local shops have been shut down. So it's another one of these places where, not only because of the pandemic with everything shut, but also because of some redevelopment programs. And we saw this, I remember, years back in the Peckham estate where Damilola Taylor was living, that he was murdered because of the environment he was in. He was murdered in circumstances that were grim and grisly. There were lots of empty buildings all around. There was no one moving around the place, only one or two people in the buildings. And the consequence was it created, again, a ghost town, sort of post-apocalyptic atmosphere. And it was there that he was found, Damilola Taylor found in a stairwell. Now, she walked along here apparently, and then had a 15-minute conversation with her boyfriend. So presumably he could have been sitting around in the bushes over here and followed her down the street. Perhaps then he had a car parked somewhere nearby, because it seems he had some sort of hired car, so there's a bit murky, you can't work out the exact details. To be honest, the better articles have been in the Daily Mail. And I found the news reporting yesterday disgusting, because rather than focus on what's really, really, really creepy about this, which is the fact that a police officer, and quite a high ranking, he's given a gun, he's diplomatic mission, he's parliamentary, he's Downing Street, American embassy, and he feels that he's sufficiently powerful that he can literally go and murder a young woman walking through the park and down the street. And they obviously thought that he could get away with it. Maybe he's just escalated, maybe he's been doing this for some time. And under the cover of lockdown, they could also, you look at these police officers when they're on demonstrations against the lockdown, or demonstrations for, not even demonstrations, it was a mental health music event only in Fulham a couple of weeks ago, when I was arrested, when a young woman was arrested. They're brutally mistreated. Everything shut in, lockdown, completely empty and silent. I think over the last 20-30 years there have been a couple of murders in the park here. I have to look back at the newspaper records. I seem to recall that was the case. Look, there's a camera here, so what record do the police have from that camera? There's a CCTV camera up there on the corner of this road. So assuming it's on, of course, I remember going to the police a few times in Westminster when people attacked me, and I asked them for the camera footage, and it was nearly always the case that the police were unable to turn up with the footage, and they said, well, all the cameras in Westminster have been turned up, what they said to us. So they create this apparatus of surveillance, and for the little things that or for the important things that it should be used for, they don't use them. And you can bet your bottom dollar these posters, you can bet your bottom dollar these posters were put up not by the police but by family and friends who, you know, who were concerned about Sarah Everard going missing. I think that's quite appropriate, this one, isn't it? Disaster ahead. So this is Pointers Lane. So she walked down here. I'm going to go to the point where it appears they believe she was abducted up the street here. Again, with everyone stuck at home, I mean, it's never the busiest area here for pedestrian life, but with everyone stuck at home, told to stay at home, of course, the likelihood of them being on the streets and people being on the streets at 9:30 is obviously far lower. And everybody knows you feel more protected if you've got... Everybody knows you feel more protected if there are other people around on the street. Plus, if, you know, if the lockdown hadn't existed, then of course this young woman probably would have gone with a few friends somewhere. You know, you don't just go on your own everywhere all the time. And it's this regulations, these mad regulations that say you have to always be on your own. Only one person can go outside. Only meet one person anywhere. And this is the tip of the iceberg. We don't even know what's happened during this lockdown, for example, and the previous lockdowns. I bet you they'll still find people, you know, dead bodies, buildings where no one's known what happened to that person. You know, mummy sitting around. The consequence of the collapse of society that has taken place during the various lockdowns, collective endeavour, you know, enjoyment, family meetings, gathering for dinner, getting together with friends, all forbidden. Another thing, there's a police station here. You know, walking up this road here, in front there is a police station, or should I better say, it used to be a police station. So gradually they've moved the police into sort of mobile units, and they've reduced their physical presence in. And so up to the corner, you know, we're literally a few hundred meters now from where Sarah Everard was killed or was captured. And in front of you here, do we have a police station abandoned and closed down. This is where we're at in Britain, you see, and in front of the police station where it says keep out, property secured, we have a sign that someone has put up while they were looking for her, hoping she'd still be alive. Here we have it, a police station, or a former police station. As I said, I lived in the area here a few years back. What's the place called? The bus stop still remembers the truth. Just the bus stop here, as you can see, this is Cavendish Road Police Station. There was a police station which was active and was. I think it's exciting that he would or grab someone on the street in front of a police station, but of course he knows as a police officer where the stations are, and so he will have known that this station has been closed down. Yeah. And down the street here they got a sign, and this down the side streets here is kind of more of a posh little villagey area. So you see here you have this thing, this is a neighbourhood watch area. Yeah? And it probably is a bit more closely supervised. It's certainly a lot more middle class. But if you walk down here, there's a couple of estates which have been quite badly run down over the years. Even though they were pretty good flats originally, it was quite nice designs on the buildings. The area has been this estate, Clapham Park Estate I think it's called, which goes sort of from here up towards the top of Brixton Hill, is a little bit run down, to be honest with you, to put it mildly. So apparently she was walking up here, and just around the corner up here is where she must have been abducted. Now the television yesterday, when I saw it, there was a lot of discussion. I couldn't quite understand how they jumped within 2 minutes of discussing the murder of this young woman, Sarah Everard. Within 2 minutes of discussing, like, she was murdered by a policeman, or it appears by a policeman, within 2 minutes it was all about male violence against women. Now, I fully support the right of women to completely freely move around like everybody else, and I fully support the cause of women to fight against oppression and against misogyny and against patriarchy. But to turn a police murder into this insane demand from a green lord that all men should be inside, like, locked down after 6 o'clock, it's literally psychotic. And how does that even make the news? How does someone even get away with linking those two stories together? It's the most bizarre thing, you know, that these journalists think it's fair to misuse the barbarism of the murder of this young woman into a divide and rule concept of women against men. Quite bizarre and insane. So it appears to be the estates around here that they were, where they believe that she was abducted. Now, it could be here or it could be just over here where there's another park and it's a bit quieter. But again, about 9:30 at night in lockdown, this no doubt would have been the deadest place you could imagine, apart from the occasional passing car. Now, how could well, I say occasional passing car, it's quite a busy street. So how could a police officer get the woman without somebody, even without passing cars, notice something's amiss? So the only way that could happen would be something like showing a police ID and claiming that he's, dealing with lockdown infringement. Let's come to the corner over here and see if there's any cameras around there, why they assume she was grabbed right here. Maybe they've got some track on her phone records or something, although they said her phone went dead. Yeah, so I mean the park. Yeah, I mean otherwise she would have had to been somehow abducted into the park over there. But I think it's far more likely that rather than being grabbed, as a friend of mine posted something yesterday on Facebook saying, she's been grabbed several times by aggressive men on the street. And of course these are disgusting acts. That do come from this misogyny and patriarchal order, but at the same time, certain things promote these things, and one of the things that promotes these things more than anything is the lockdown. It promotes, conflict inside the houses, people fighting over resources, and of course, in all these circumstances, the power relations within the family, male v female, adult v children, will be escalated, exacerbated, the worst aspects multiplied. And you see over here again, here is what would again be, so down the road there you had the police station, and here we have a row of shops and a pub, a row of shops and a pub, all of which is abandoned, apart from one shop, two shops on the corner. All the rest of it is closed down, and half of this estate is pretty much empty. So you see there are conditions which facilitate crimes, brutality, and exacerbate problems. And this is what I'm arguing. You see, with the virus, I've been arguing that the environmental circumstances, the ventilation, for example, is a decisive issue which has not been resolved, not even been addressed. And instead of that, don't try to put us all in masks and make us fear our neighbours and make us fear our friends and fear our family, lock us all at home. And now, I mean, it's a push, but I don't see how you can't conclude that there is some connection here. The misuse of power, the increasing sense of entitlement amongst the police that I can do what I like. You have to do what I say. I just think it's unavoidable that there is a connection between this. So I felt I should come down here and look at the area, because it does have a certain creepiness about it. The way in which the people have been, the working class people around this area, which leaves a whole area of the community in, frankly, unpleasant circumstances, where, of course the most vulnerable, and that means the women, when walking down the streets, will become more vulnerable because of the environmental dangers associated with the rundown community. And so it is also that the people in Bradford and Oldham, for example, were more vulnerable to getting the virus because of the conditions they lived in. See, social conditions are an important factor in all these questions. We have a couple of coppers over there on the beat. You never saw cops around here before. When I lived here, there were no police ever walking around here on the beat or anything like that. Anyway, signing off for now. Some observations, and I just felt I should come down and follow this route around just to be able to contemplate on what's been happening.